Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, January the 10th, 2024. A couple of days ago, I talked about David Bowie and, looked at his horoscope. And I don't really think I did a very good job. I don't think I really got to the heart of David Bowie's chart. I think the issue we have when we have a chart like David Bowie, because David Bowie was obviously an exceptional person whose cultural impact was spectacular, and he was able to kind of understand the way the zeitgeist was changing in the world. And he had these various periods in his life, his Ziggy Stardust period, his Berlin period, and so forth. So, yeah, he was really exceptional. So we need to be able to find that exceptionality in the chart. And, there is a temptation when we have a chart to just completely use hindsight. We know that this person is famous, so we start to exaggerate particular things in the chart. For example, he has Aquarius rising. 1 in 12 people have Aquarius rising north and south hemisphere. Well, that's actually not true, because Aquarius rising in the northern hemisphere is relatively uncommon. Virgo is the most common rising sign in the northern hemisphere. Pisces is the least common. So, okay, Aquarius rising is a relatively uncommon rising sign. But nonetheless, we can overinterpret that Aquarius rising. We can think, oh, Aquarius, that's very original and so forth. But still, a lot of people have Aquarius rising. It's not enough to say, oh, it's got Aquarius rising. So, we have to be careful. We have to be able to say, almost objectively, what is it? What is it that's really special about the chart? And, I think we must, in my opinion, avoid the temptation to bring in too many points. I don't know if you've been listening to my videos since I've been doing this channel in last February. I am not a fan of asteroids. Asteroids seem to me to be a good way of just creating significance and creating meaning. If we throw enough asteroids into a chart, we'll eventually find what we're looking for. So, that is one of the reasons I do have problems with asteroids. And so there might be the temptation to do this with David Bowie. No, we need to have a simple signature of why he is special, of what makes him special. And as far as I'm concerned, the best way of doing this is not to find loads of asteroids. It's not to overinterpret his Aquarius rising, but it's to look at the structure of the chart, perhaps using techniques that at the moment are not commonly used, in particular midpoints and 45-degree aspects. So I do want to look at his chart with particular reference to those 45-degree aspects. I also want to consider his death. I mean, I did look at his death. He died 2 days after his 69th birthday, and so I do want to have a further look at what was going on in terms of his death, with particular reference to the technique of primary directions. And I think we have sort of a clear signature of his death that I do want to look at. So I'm sorry I'm going to be looking at David Bowie only kind of 2 days after I've already looked at him, but I feel the first time I did it, I just didn't do a good job, and so I want to have another go. Okay, before I look at David Bowie, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, January the 10th, 2024. So let's see what's going on. It's actually quite a busy day for a number of reasons. So there is an aspect between the Sun and Uranus for a start. The Sun is still in Capricorn, and there's the Sun, 20 Capricorn. Moon now is in Capricorn as well, so you can see we've got a build up to a new moon. But the Sun is making this trine to Uranus. Sun 1920 Capricorn, trine 19 Taurus. Remember, this chart is set for noon in New York for today, January the 10th. So Sun trine Uranus, it's quite exciting. It is in earth signs, so it's not as dramatic as it would be if this trine was in fire signs. But we may get some interesting ideas about reconfiguring our material environment, perhaps new ways of making money. If you're into, I don't know, gardening, you might have an interesting idea about planting whatever. That might be how Sun trine Uranus might work. So it depends on the situation, depends on what you're doing. Also, Mars makes a sesquiquadrate to Uranus. Now, that is a somewhat more difficult aspect. So there is Mars at 433 Capricorn, and there's Uranus 1912 Taurus. So Mars and Uranus are 135 degrees away from each other. So remember, 135 degrees is 3/8 of the circle. And so Mars sesquiquadrate Uranus could be a bit dangerous. Some of us may be tempted to be a little hasty, and we might be quick to lose our temper, and technology could be a problem. Mars Uranus as a pair, often connected with technology and machinery. So we do have to be careful with machinery. If we're into guns, and if you're living somewhere where guns are legal, just be and you're playing with guns, be careful with Mars sesquiquadrate Uranus. But there might be a sort of atmosphere of violence, not necessarily about us as individuals, but just in the world, something we might be aware of. Mars is also sextile Saturn. So Mars and Saturn. Mars is for Capricorn. Saturn is for Pisces. So that's a kind of slightly different influence. When I talk about Mars-Saturn combinations, certainly in the past, I've sort of emphasized that Mars and Saturn are connected with death and frustration and things not working. But Mars sextile Saturn, that's better. It might be about being able to work incredibly hard and be very effective about it. It's about being able to just deal with the pressure and actually to turn perhaps an oppressive situation into something of a benefit. So it may not be so bad, that Mars sextile Saturn. Though maybe, I suppose, if you want to be really negative about Mars sextile Saturn, it might be good for nefarious activities. Now, I'm certainly not recommending that you get involved in nefarious activities, because in the end it will always come back on you. But Mars and Saturn are the lesser and greater malefics. So if people do bad things, perhaps there's a higher chance than average that they'll get away with it. So watch out. At least get away with it in the short term. So watch out for cheats, swindlers, criminals, whatever. because maybe they'll be able to benefit short term from this Mars sextile Saturn. Now, I have looked at today when I looked at the astrology for the week, and I suggested that you can actually try to bring some of these aspects together, because you've got Mars sextile Saturn, you've got Mars sesquiquadrate Uranus, and you've got Sun trine Uranus. So all of these planets are sort of connected, but how are they connected? So what we could do is we could take this chart, Wednesday noon, New York, and we can set up the 12th harmonic for it. Now, reason it's the 12th harmonic is because you've got Sun trine Uranus, so trines relate to the number 3. We've got Mars sextile Saturn, and sextiles relate to the number 6. And then we've got sesquiquadrates, which relate to the number 8. So, we could do the 24th harmonic, because 8's going to 24, 6 is going to 24, and 3 is going to 24. But we can actually get away with the 12th harmonic, because in the 12th harmonic, we can still see everything through conjunctions and oppositions. But I'll show you. So here is the 12th harmonic of today's planetary positions. So what I'm doing, at least what the program is doing mathematically, is it's multiplying everything by 12. So if you've got, 15 Aries, multiply that by 12. 12 times 15 is, I think it's 180 off the top of my head. So 15 Aries would turn into 0 degrees Libra. But here are the 12th harmonic positions. And what I want to show you with this 12th harmonic position is that from a 12th harmonic perspective, we've got Mars conjunct Saturn, opposition Sun conjunct Uranus. So that actually shows from a 12th harmonic perspective but it's actually quite a tense day. What is the 12th harmonic about? 12 is 3 times 4. 3 is about ease. 4 is about struggle and difficulty. So that's what happens when you've got the number 12. You're struggling to make something easy. You're struggling to bring something together, and that's the conjunction. If two planets are opposition on a 12th harmonic, the struggle is even more intense. It's a real battle. So you've got this Mars-Saturn conjunction in a 12th harmonic battling a Sun-Uranus conjunction. So put this together, it's a tense situation. It didn't seem to be tense when you looked at it in the regular first harmonic chart, which I always look at. First harmonic means the regular birth chart. 12th harmonic is when you multiply everything by 12. So yeah, I think it could be a really tense day where people could get angry. Watch the news, see what people are doing, see what's going on in the world's trouble spots, because I think that could be a problem. These aspects. So remember what we're doing with this 12th harmonic. We're trying to put together Sun trine Uranus, Mars sextile Saturn, and Mars sesquiquadrate Uranus, and we're trying to put it all into one chart. Okay, so let's go back to the regular chart. So another aspect we've got is a semi-square, that's 45 degrees, between Venus and Pluto. So there is Venus and there's Pluto. They are 45 degrees apart. Venus, planet of relationships. Pluto, planet of obsessions. So in terms of relationships, there could be a bit of obsessiveness and possessiveness. People do want to cling on. They don't want to let go of things. And so if you are in a relationship, especially if there have been recent difficulties in the relationship, then, tread carefully. and avoid making promises. Because you might be called on to honor that promise. You try to, not get caught in emotional games. With Venus semi-square Pluto, it's not a good day for emotional games. It's not these are not good games to play. Things could go wrong. But the obsessiveness of Venus semi-square Pluto may not just be about relationships. It could be about money. Money may be very important to people, even small sums of money. Money may be a matter of principle. They don't want to give up a penny. Probably heated discussions about money should probably be avoided. For everyone's peace of mind. So I should also point out that I just said there's a new moon. We do have a build up to a new moon today. Tomorrow is a new moon. So this is today is the end of a lunar cycle. The moon is waning. It's kind of almost like the dead part of the cycle. So it's possibly not the best time to be starting things. You want to start things when the moon is getting bigger, not when it's getting smaller, not when it's getting right at the end of the cycle. So if you're planning on starting something, probably best to wait it out. Of course, this new cycle, which starts tomorrow, is the last cycle of the Chinese New Year. The Chinese New Year, of course, will start in a lunar at the end of the next cycle. So it's a time perhaps to sort of keep a low profile, to reflect on what's happened on the past month. Though, one other thing, the moon is conjunct Mars. So at noon, in New York time, it's at noon. It's separating. Moon at 9 Capricorn, Mars at 4 Capricorn. But if you're in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, maybe that Moon-Mars conjunction is going to be more pressing. I think it's going to also be important if you're in the Americas, but perhaps it's going to be more powerful. Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and Moon-Mars conjunction in Capricorn can be a bit stormy. People want to express themselves. They want to express their feelings. They want to look after their own interests, because Moon in Capricorn can be quite a self-focused placement. Avoid arguments. And, if someone insists that they're right, then probably you shouldn't argue with them unless it's an important matter. But just don't argue with people just for a matter of principle or as a matter of pride, because that's not going to work out. Okay, so that's the overall astrology for today. And so what I want to do now is go through the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for today, for the 12 signs for Wednesday, January the 10th, 2024. Aries, you are actually in a pretty powerful position. It's a time when you have finally made up your mind. In the past there may have been a lot of thinking, theorizing, playing with different ideas, but now it's a new year, it's 2024, and suddenly it's coming together. So Aries, I think you really do know what you want. I think that particularly applies to your career. So in terms of if you have a job, you're looking at your job, you're looking at what it's, at your prospects, what you're achieving, and you're asking yourself, is this good enough? What can I do to make changes? Now, it may be that everything's fine at work, in which case you can just keep plugging on and I think you'll be very successful. But if you're not satisfied with your current job or your current career, then I think you have the incentive to make big changes. And I think you can do it. Now, when I say make big changes, I'm absolutely not talking about, losing your temper, walking out, or that kind of thing. No, it's deciding things aren't good enough, and then deciding that, okay, this is what I have to do, and you will go through it step by step until you've achieved your aims. Remember, Aries, that Mars is your ruler. Mars is in Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and so yes, I'm really sort of optimistic that you can get what you want. But you don't have to make a big show about it. Just decide what needs to be done, and slowly but surely go and do it. While you're at it, though, be careful what you say. Not just in a workings environment sense. Just whatever you're doing today, be careful. Be careful about what you're saying. Reason being is that Mars, which is your ruling planet, is aspecting the Mercury-Hades midpoint. So Hades is this rather malefic hypothetical planet, often connected with garbage and criminality. Mercury is the communication planet at the same time. So if you put Mercury and Hades together, you might come up with bad language, base language, using bad words, just being vulgar. And so with Mars on the Mercury-Hades midpoint, there may be a temptation in certain situations, particularly when you're under pressure, when you're not getting what you want, to use vulgar language. So Aries, you have to be careful there. And at the same time, I've just said that in terms of your working life, that you have to be careful. Not careful. You have to be methodical. That's what I meant to say. Yes, you have to be methodical, but at the same time, you are an Aries. You can be a bit hasty. And today you can be hasty. Today you're actually slightly accident prone. And now I think your accident proneness is probably going to be more about what you say, just using vulgar language in a way that is completely inappropriate. But, in general, avoid doing stuff that's dangerous with Mars. With Mars, your ruler, is sesquiquadrate Uranus, potentially the planet of accidents. So do be careful on that score. But if you focus on making solid progress, maybe unspectacular progress, but progress nonetheless, especially work, business, career, I think you can have a great day. Taurus. It's a day, Taurus, when you can look around the world in which you live, and you can see new stuff. You can see that actually things have changed. The world around you has become more exciting, and there are new opportunities for you. Now, there is a danger here that you're just too stuck in your ways. You've decided that things should be done in a particular manner, and you just want to keep going in that direction. Just stuck in a particular direction. But you don't really want to be stuck in a particular direction, do you, Taurus? No, I don't think so. I think that there are opportunities here to get involved in sort of new knowledge, new experiences, perhaps listening to people who maybe no morphin you in certain fields. So don't be afraid of doing something new. It needn't be so bad. Don't be afraid, for example, of learning something new. I don't know what you want to do. You might want to learn a new language, for example, or learn a new skill, or consider a way of looking at the world is different. So, from a political and philosophical perspective, yes, Taurians often have very strong views, but just consider the possibility that your views need to be moderated just a bit. And perhaps if you've got a problem today, it might actually be fear. I don't think that's fear of anything real, but I think some Taurians are just going to be just worried. You might be imagining all the things that could go wrong. You won't be doing it in a particularly rational way. You'll be quite silent about it. You'll be having these dark thoughts about what might go wrong, even what has already gone wrong and is about to get even worse. And I think you have to make sure you don't take things too far. It's always important to have caution. There's nothing wrong with being afraid. It's quite natural and healthy to be afraid. But there comes a point when fear gets out of control, and you can be afraid of things which simply don't exist. So be wary of that. And perhaps if you're afraid of something, and it's preventing you from taking action, what you need to do is to discuss it. Discuss it with someone you trust. That might be a way of giving yourself the freedom, the freedom to act. Another thing to bear in mind is that you may be quite fixated on particular ways of dealing with people. So all of us have patterns of relationships. And these patterns of relationships, they're often pretty fixed. We have fixed ways of relating to people. When we get in touch with them, we always have these same interactions, and it just keeps going. We're just going through the motions, and so that's how we run these networks around us. But today you might become a little possessive. You might want people to keep relating to you in a particular way, and if they want to change, you might not take kindly to it. You might be offended. But Taurus, I think it's important that you allow people to change, particularly if they're close friends, close family, partners, whatever. You can't expect people never to change. And you have to perhaps recognize that change is healthy. So don't get too obsessed about old ways of doing things, old ways of relating. Try to be flexible, and if someone's doing something you don't understand, don't automatically take offense. Don't automatically think that you're losing something. Try to work out what's going on, and don't be afraid of talking about it. Don't be afraid of asking questions. Gemini. In some respects, Gemini, you're a bit cosmic today. Reason I say that is because the planet Mercury, your ruling planet, is close to a star. I think it's a star, but it's a galactic center, whatever it is. It is the galactic center. And the galactic center, I believe, is the theoretical center of the galaxy around which the Earth solar system is moving. So Right now, Mercury, your ruler, is on the galactic center. And this may encourage Geminis to be really thinking beyond their immediate environment. You've already got this a little because Mercury is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is quite a forward-thinking sign, but you throw the galactic center in, and you're really you're way out there. So that's probably a good thing, within reason. Allow your aspirations to wander. You don't have to make any commitments. You don't have to spend money. Just be really open-minded, and you might just have some ideas today, or even have sort of events going on in your life which really are quite cosmic. So that means, I think, you are certainly an interesting person to have around, and there's a lot you can accomplish. Having said that, Geminis can be a little unreliable. Not just unreliable, but they can let people down because they have sudden changes of mind, and you can be, for example, having a lot to do with someone for a long time, and then suddenly you're thinking, I don't find that person very interesting. Because, when Geminis get bored of you, that's bad. That's really bad. And boredom is always an issue with Geminis. It's not that Geminis are always bored. I'm a Gemini. I haven't been bored for quite a long time. But it can be, for some Geminis, an issue. And Geminis, once they get bored of someone, that really can be the end of it. And there is a sense today for Geminis of saying goodbye. Some things have just passed their sell-by date. Mercury, your ruling planet, it wants to let go. And so, are you ready to say goodbye to certain people? I'm probably not talking about people who are really major fixtures in your life. Like close family, close friends, but people who are sort of on the fringes, who you might have had a lot to do with over the last month or two, that kind of person, you might feel that, well, it's time to say goodbye. And really, that's it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to apologize about. And of course, it might be the other way around. It may be someone wants to say goodbye to you. And likewise, you shouldn't be offended. Not every relationship, not every contact is there to is going to go on forever. So do consider that. The same time, when you are dealing with people, it's really important to be sensitive. Gemini is not the most emotional planet on the. I was going to say not the most emotional planet on the planet. No, not really. It's just that doesn't sound right. Gemini is not the most emotional sign, and under normal circumstances, but you have got a set of feelings, and right now, your feelings can actually be finely tuned. If you make the effort, you can really pick up on other people, pick up on what makes them tick, and this will enable you to behave correctly and to do the right thing. So that's something you should be doing, particularly now. People are still important to you. Mercury is still moving through Sagittarius, your opposite sign. So make a special effort to understand the people around you, and it will be well worth it. Cancer. At the moment, there is a build-up to a new moon. The new moon is tomorrow, but you can feel it. I mean, after all, the sun is in Capricorn now, and the moon is in Capricorn. The moon is moving towards this conjunction with the sun, and Capricorn is your opposite sign. So, with this new moon, you can feel that the people around you, that they are changing, and at the same time, their needs are changing, and yet they're right there. They want your attention. I don't think it's a day when you can do things completely on your own. You have to accept the fact that you do live in a social world where there are people to deal with. So that is something that you're going to have to manage. Now, certain relationships are going to be quite exhausting, and they are going to become more exhausting as the day progresses. Reason being is moon is your ruler, and it is moving closer and closer to the sun, and so okay, that conjunction doesn't happen until tomorrow. That conjunction, by definition, is a new moon, and there's some danger that you feel somewhat overwhelmed when you get too close to people. Certain people are just too much to deal with. So Cancer, I think you do need to protect yourself. Almost in a psychic sense. By psychic, I'm talking about, all those vibes and emotions flying around and sort of weak auras, that kind of thing. So yeah, don't allow the situation to become overwhelming. But I think if you just accept the power that other people can have, and you accept that you do have to deal with other people, but at the same time you need to make your own boundaries clear. Then I think you should be able to manage the situation, and because tomorrow it is more of the same. Because tomorrow, that's when the new moon really becomes exact, and so that's something you have to be ready for. Leo. In some ways, Leo, it is an exciting day, because the sun, your ruler, is trine Uranus. Uranus is a planet of revolutions. It's a planet of change. So yes, things can change. But what kind of things can change? I think one thing that you might want to consider changing today is some of your routines. It's very easy to do, the same thing day in, day out. You get used to it. It works. You just carry on with it. And it just becomes part of your daily routine, and you perhaps stop questioning it. So look at your daily routine. Look at the stuff you do every day. Are you doing it right? Very simple things. I don't know. Yes, sure, one has to clean one's teeth every day, twice a day. That's a good thing to do. One has to I don't know, is one supposed to floss every day, whatever, that kind of routine. It's needed, but maybe that the way you clean your teeth needs to be changed. It could be trivial like that. Okay, it's not trivial. Teeth are important, but there's some routine in your life or probably a couple of routines which you hardly think about, and somehow they need to change. That might mean they need to go, or maybe they need to be improved. Maybe you're just not doing it right. And so perhaps you should stop and think about why you're doing what you're doing, and analyze it. And if you're not doing it right, see what changes you can make. And don't be afraid of consulting an expert, whoever that might be. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's going to be a down, boring day. After all, the Sun, your ruler, is not just making a trine to Uranus, it's also on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. So that really does mean that you can create excitement, and that may actually come about through the breaking down of certain routine activities. Maybe not just your routine activities, but other people's routine activities. What are the people around you? What are they doing every day? What are they just doing? Same old, same old. And you can just suddenly stop and say, no, that's not the way it needs to be done. And so, yes, I think you can be a revolutionary, but the kind of revolutionary that isn't about smashing things up just for the sake of it. You're the kind of revolutionary that can bring positive change, and show everyone that things can be done in a better way. And you're just the person. You're just the person to perhaps provide some leadership. And of course, being a Leo, I suppose you like being a leader, but it's in many respects leadership by example. If you want other people to do something, it's absolutely essential that you are prepared to do it yourself. Virgo, you can be actually today pretty creative. You probably have talents that you don't show off about. You don't really show off. You're quite modest about your creative talents. Maybe it's a creative talent that you haven't exercised for years. Perhaps you were good at something, I don't know, decades ago, perhaps in your childhood, whatever, and you just let it slip. It's not important, but actually it is important. And so if you have a creative talent that you've allowed to slip, that you have just allowed to disappear, maybe it's time to get going on it again. Now, you might think, oh, that's going to be really tedious, having to start all over again. No, it's not. It's not like that. The memory is there, or what do they say? The muscle memory is there, if it's something you were doing a lot, and you just need to get going on it. I understand that being a Virgo, you can be very self-critical, and you can think, well, what's the point? But no, there is a point, because it's a time when you need to be thinking about what you can do, or what are your talents, what are your God-given talents, what were you put on this earth to do. Maybe you started doing what you were supposed to be doing, and then you forgot about it and you got sidetracked. But now you need to think about it again, because I really do think that you can achieve something really, really good over the next couple of days. Now, I do understand that not everyone is going to be helpful, not everyone is going to be constructive, because if you're trying to be creative, you often need support. You at least need encouragement. And if you find that you're not being encouraged, that certain people just are not showing any interest in what you want to do, then really that's their problem, not yours. You really shouldn't feel any necessity to make other people happy, to do things other people's way, to have to explain or apologize what you want to do. No, you just go and do it. And if anyone is not being supportive, then you have to ask, well, hold on, why do you need them? Why do you need to have them around you? They can go and do their own thing. You don't have to have them dragging you down. And in that sense, it is a time when you can be quite independent-minded. Now, I don't know whether you were listening to some of my previous forecasts of some of the other signs, but when I was talking about Gemini, I did mention the fact that Gemini's ruling planet is on the galactic center at the moment. Well, Virgo, like Gemini, your ruling planet is also on the galactic center right now. Mercury is your ruler. It's on the galactic center. I think the galactic center is right now around 26, 27 Sagittarius, something like that. Um, and so that gives you even more of an impulse to do something really special, to do something amazing, but to do something amazing where you really don't have to show off. You don't. It's not about, as I said, it's not about persuading other people or trying to prove to other people that you should be allowed to do your own thing. It's kind of quite private. You know it's right, and you know that, and you really don't have to apologize. Libra. Well, Libra, it's important to be confident. Confidence is always important. Some Librans can lack confidence. Reason being that they're concerned about the social environment in which they have to function, and so they're always or often trying to please. They want to be part of the social environment. They don't want to rock the boat. And you just might be afraid that if you do the wrong thing, you might maybe lose friends, lose favor with people. You can't allow this to hold you up, not at all. This lack of confidence that you might feel, it's largely relates to fears which are both irrational and temporary. It's just we've got a fast-moving planet, Venus, your ruler, on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint, and so yes, there may be fears, particularly fears about the way you're communicating, whether or not you're going in the right direction, and these fears might hold you up. So you have got to be aware of that. And it's probably a day when, if you want to make the most of everything you've got, you possibly shouldn't try too hard to ingratiate with other people. Sure, you can talk to people, communicate with people, sort of get some feedback from people. If they give you good feedback and if they're friendly, that's great. But in many cases, you're going to do your best. You're going to do your best work when you are alone or in somewhere safe and secure, somewhere that you are familiar with. One final point, as far as other people is concerned, I've already suggested that maybe you should stick to your own company. And, one reason for that is that some of the people you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis may not be helpful. They may even be a little dangerous. They may just be a bit too hasty, quick to make decisions. The things they say might not be helpful. They might even be quite offensive, actually. And that's just not what you need. So only hang out with people who you really trust. Because if you don't trust someone or if you don't know them properly, then there might be an unpleasant surprise. So that is something to take into consideration. Scorpio. Overall, things don't look too bad for you, Scorpio. I think it's a time when your mind is on good form. I think that you're able to communicate very well. I mean, your communication style is, at the moment, really very down to earth. You say what you want. You're pretty clear about what you want, and you're able to use fairly simple language. And I think it helps the fact that you're able to, talk about material things, perhaps relating to money or business. You're not afraid to talk about them, and you talk about them, in a very down-to-earth way that everyone understands. And I don't think, that you'll cause offence. However, you are kind of torn in two directions. This is because Mars, your ruler, makes two aspects. It makes a sextile to Saturn, and it makes a sesquiquadrate to Uranus. I think in most cases you should try to focus on a sextile to Saturn rather than a sesquiquadrate to Uranus. So if we take Mars sextile Saturn, and what does it mean for a Scorpio? What it means for a Scorpio is this is a time, this is a day when you can work really hard. You can push yourself. I won't say to the limits, but you can push yourself hard. And in the process, you can get really good results. So if there's something that needs to be done and there's a time limit, then I think today might be the day. Today you can cover a lot of ground very efficiently, and I suppose in the end quite quickly, although it might not feel like it at the time. The Mars sesquiquadrate Uranus. Now, Mars is your ruler. It's sesquiquadrate Uranus. Uranus can be the planet of accidents. Be careful what you do. It's not a day for doing things that are dangerous. It might be fun, but it's not a good idea. Don't take risks. Don't take physical risks. Don't play with machinery you don't fully understand. So whether it's at home or at work, if you're playing with something dangerous or electricity, trying to fix something that's dangerous, just don't do it. It's not a good idea with Mars sesquiquadrate Uranus, but you knew that anyway. But so I had to put that warning in. But that doesn't take away from the fact that if you go about things in the right way, today you're going to be able to make solid progress. Mars continues to be in Capricorn. It's your ruler. Mars is your ruler. It's in Capricorn, the sign of its exaltation, and it's sextile Saturn. That means that whatever effort you put in, you'll get rewarded in terms of clear results, and perhaps in the end you'll get praise. But I don't think praise is not what you're not in it for praise. You're in it for right now. You're in it for getting what you want in a very methodical way. Sagittarius. Okay, Sagittarius, things are changing for you. They have been changing for a few days. So what's happened is that there was a big build-up in your star sign. Not so long ago, the moon was in Sagittarius, Mercury was in Sagittarius, Venus was in Sagittarius. Okay, Mercury and Venus are still in Sagittarius, but the moon is now out of Sagittarius. Mars used to be in Sagittarius. So with all this emphasis on Sagittarius, quite recently there was a time when there was a big emphasis on you. It might have felt that you were the center of attention. It was down to you to make things happen. That could be a bit of pressure. That did put pressure on you, I think. But the Sagittarius season is over. The sun left your star sign the end of last month at the solstice, and I think perhaps you can take a step back. You don't have to be in the center of attention anymore. You perhaps instead can just be focusing on stabilizing yourself, because stability is what you need. I know stability. Sagittarius, you're an exciting sign. It can be an exciting sign. But you do need some stability at times, and I think this is what's happening. And I'm thinking particularly of financial stability. The moon has just moved into Capricorn, and in the Sagittarian solar chart, Capricorn is very connected with money. And so, this is a time for making sure you've got enough money. making sure that you're not spending too much money. So that is something that you very much need to focus on. But that's not the only thing. And I've been a bit sort of negative there, telling you to kind of get your act together, perhaps in a financial and administrative sense. But on a positive note, think about some of your skills, because Jupiter's your ruling planet, and Jupiter at the moment is aspecting the Mercury-Venus midpoint. So the Mercury-Venus pair are connected with art and business, sculpting, anything to do with creativity. It's a very creative combination, Mercury-Venus. I suppose it's like Venus is about aesthetics. It's about the way things look, what things look like, and then Mercury is about intelligence. So it's using your intelligence to create something which has a good look. Okay, that can also be about writing. It can be writing, sculpture, business, whatever artistic and creative ability you have. And then you've got Jupiter aspecting the Mercury-Venus midpoint. That allows you to really use those artistic talents and to really, really absolutely make the most of it. Now, that might be hard work. You can't just be you can't just sort of be there and just expect to be able to create wonderful things just by doing nothing. You're going to have to put the work in. At first, it might feel a bit tough, but if you keep going, if you start the creative process, things will rapidly start moving. And so I think that's really what you need to focus on. What you need to focus on today. So today can be a bit of a beginning there, though maybe as far as beginnings are concerned, I suppose I have to point out that we are actually at the tail end of a lunar cycle, with the new moon being tomorrow. So do the planning, but perhaps the formal beginnings should perhaps wait until tomorrow. Capricorn. There's a lot going on now because the moon is now in your star sign, and with the moon in your star sign, you kind of feel in your element. You feel that you understand the world around you, and that your perceptions, your way of being, does fit in with your environment. And moon in Capricorn, I understand that the moon in Capricorn sometimes has a rather difficult reputation, a problem reputation, because the moon doesn't actually work too well in Capricorn, all things being equal. It's sometimes regarded as being a bit selfish in Capricorn. But you are a Capricorn. And so when the moon moves into your star sign, you understand what's important. And perhaps that's where the selfishness comes in. You know that certain things have to be done, and you know that not everyone is going to be happy with what you're doing, and there is a role for self-interest. And so, if you want to put your own interests first, that's fine. You don't have to apologize for it. That's just the way it is. Now, at the same time as all this is going on, you do have a certain amount of energy at your disposal. You can keep going. You're unlikely to sort of tire yourself out. Once you decide that something needs to be done. And once you start work on it, you'll be surprised how much energy you really have, how you're able to just keep going. Reason being is because Mars, which is a very energetic planet, is making a sextile aspect to Saturn, your ruler. So you're going to be able to cover a lot of ground, and if you run into any obstacles, then you will know how to get rid of them. I won't use the word violent, but you are able, if necessary, you are able to exert actually considerable force, a force that other people might regard as being over the top, just something really dramatic. If something stands in your way, so that really does put you in a good position. So Capricorn, I think you get the picture. And in many respects, Capricorn, right now, today, you're probably the strongest sign in the zodiac, all things being equal. Of all the 12, I would have said Capricorns do seem to have an advantage today. Aquarius. It's probably a day when you may be inclined to take a step back. I don't think that Aquarius, you're going to really want to be in the fray. You'll just feel maybe that it's beneath you, that you would rather sort of watch rather than participate. But you do have a lot of energy. As I was saying when I talked about Capricorn, I talked about Capricorn, that they may be able to take advantage of the fact that Mars sextiles Saturn. Well, Saturn is your ruling planet. I know some people say Aquarius is a ruler of, that Uranus is a ruler of Aquarius. It's not. Saturn rules Aquarius, your star sign. And today, Mars makes a sextile to Saturn, and that does give you a lot of power, the ability to really see things through. And it's energy that seems to come from nowhere. It's almost energy that comes from the depths of your unconscious. It's just there, and you can just keep going. And I think that you can in the process accomplish a great deal. So don't underestimate yourself. Now, perhaps if there's a problem today, it may relate to the fact that the Sun is 45 degrees from Saturn. Now, I think when I talked about your star sign yesterday, I said the same thing, but because the Sun is semi-square Saturn for a couple of days, so you've got the same issue here. In the Aquarius chart, the Sun relates to another person, and so Saturn is you, the Sun is the other person, got a 45-degree aspect, which represents tension. And so it seems that you and someone else may have a difference of opinion, and you may sort of frustrate each other. I think to an extent you're probably going to do the frustrating. You are going to know how to bring people to a standstill. So is that a good thing? Now, it's true that some people do have to be brought to a standstill if they're behaving out of order. So if someone is misbehaving, doing something wrong, you're just the person to step in and just stop them. On the other hand, if someone is just being themselves, isn't causing trouble, perhaps they have a particular view of the world, perhaps they have particular interests, there's a temptation, Aquarius, for you to go in and just close them down. Maybe it's a family member, a friend, someone who's trying to do something different. Don't do that unless you know what you're doing. At worst, Aquarius, there may be a certain temptation to be a bully. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's just be aware of that you could be a bully, you could be obnoxious today, and if you misuse your power, yes, you can get your way, but you have to ask yourself whether it's really worth it. And it goes back to what I was saying. I said that many Aquarians are going to perhaps want to be step back from everything. Fine. So there's no need to force people to do one thing or the other, is there? Perhaps you can just watch from a distance. Sure, if someone's about to make a serious mistake, then you have to intervene. But probably non-interference is the best strategy, at least in most cases. Pisces. Pisces, you are, I think, in quite a good position. I think you're able to communicate pretty well. There's something about the way you use words today which is actually quite clever. And I don't just mean the spoken word, I'm talking about the written word as well. So if you're writing emails, text messages, whatever, there is something clever, and you will have an ability to know what to say and what not to say. And I think that does give you an important advantage. Communication really does matter. At the same time, I think your social skills are going to be good. I think it's a good time for socializing. But probably you don't want to put too much effort into your social life, particularly now. Things might seem to be going well, with friends. If you're going, I don't know, I suppose it's a sort of middle of a week. I don't know, are there any parties in the middle of a week? I suppose it depends, doesn't it? But social gatherings, if you do go to social gatherings, they will have a lot of promise, but they might not completely fulfill your expectations. And I think part of that is because, it's just before the new moon. As I said, it's this sort of it's the final part of a lunar phase, and the new moon isn't until tomorrow. And so in the end, it may feel that kind of things are going nowhere. So yes, you've got a lot of social skills, you've got great conversation skills, but it may be difficult to actually find the right place for using these skills. So that might suggest that you need to choose your company. You choose your company carefully. But it may not always be necessary to have people around you. You've got some talents that are now coming to the surface in quite a big way, and these talents may be popular, they might be not popular, but really that shouldn't concern you. If you feel that you've got something to contribute, then now is definitely the time to do something about it. Now, as far as career, work, that kind of thing, if you are working today, I think there could be a bit of a change. Yes, you are going to have some great ideas, and you might find that other people have some great ideas as well. But you have to ask, what is the point? And I think the point, this question of what is the point is going to be important. It's perhaps no longer enough to do something for money or for power or for status. Now you're starting to think, well, yeah, but if you're going to do something, it's got to be for some higher purpose. You've got to do something to make the world a better place. And that, I think, is something that is going to start to bother you. is it really the right thing to be doing? And yeah, maybe your principles are going to start coming into the open. You might have been doing something for years, and it has perhaps all been about money, and now you're thinking, yeah, what about society? What about the planet? Whatever sets of principles are important to you, that's what you're going to be thinking about. Can you actually do a piece of work and in the process make the world a better place? Because suddenly I think that is going to become quite important to you. So yeah, so that's something you've got to think about, and you've got to work out. So yeah, morality and personal responsibility could suddenly become important today. Okay, those are the 12 signs, and what I want to do now is switch to the I Ching. So, as always, I ask the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching this video? So the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 3, difficulty at the beginning. So I think it's quite self-explanatory what this means. You're involved in a project, and at the beginning of a project, you might be wondering, where is it going? And you might be thinking, this is hard work. And there might be a temptation to just actually give up on the project. But what it really is about is good organization. If you've got a problem, you're involved in trying to get something together, and you've got to marshal your resources and quite possibly get some help. There is absolutely no shame in getting help. If you need help, get help. It's fine. It's the right thing to do. And remember, this is difficulty at the beginning. It doesn't mean to say that there are necessarily going to be difficulties at the end. But you've got to, you're starting something. You've got to make sure that it's all in order. And if you do run into problems, you've got to work out how best to deal with these problems and not just sort of give up. Nonetheless, it is hard. The kind of problems and challenges you've set yourself today. And, we have a moving line at the bottom, which I've just been talking about, but we also have a moving line at the top. And this moving line at the top is really hard because it does seem that the problems are going to intensify. And you may get a sense of chaos, and it may feel that you're just not going to achieve anything, and that it's just a complete waste of time, and it's just getting harder and harder, and there's just no point. And so there is a danger that you just give up. You're involved in something, it's a struggle from the beginning, and it's a really bad struggle at the end, so give up. That's what you might think. I don't think that is the right approach, because it still says difficulty at the beginning. There's something you have to get over. So, you have to keep pushing yourself. And I think in a way, this reflects the astrology. Remember, we've got today Mars sextile Saturn. Mars sextile Saturn is about hard work. Mars is the energy. Saturn is a discipline. Sextiles are a favorable aspect. 6 sextile, 2 times 3. 3 is about ease. 2 is about challenge and opposition. So yeah, we're struggling to make something easy, and it's not. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. But that Mars sextile Saturn, it's what's going on around us. It is frustrating. It is hard work, but eventually I think there is a way to get through. But we do have to be persistent. Anyway, this hexagram, difficulty at the beginning, does transition. It transitions to hexagram 61, which is inner truth. We will come to a stage where we understand what it's all about. Suddenly, chaos, and there's clarity. Everything will be clear. What we need to do will be clear. Finally, people will start listening to us. Even people who in the past have never listened to us will suddenly say, oh yeah, it's like that. Maybe that's us ourselves. Our own stubbornness. We haven't listened. We just really dug our heels in. Finally, it's all going to be clear. And in the process, we mustn't feel that we have to take personal responsibility for everything. It's okay to allow someone else perhaps to take over. We don't have to worry about perhaps putting ourselves in a situation where where someone is telling us what to do. That's part of it. I think perhaps part of the problem is we've taken on too much responsibility, and by accepting other people's wisdom, perhaps even accepting other people's superiority, and I don't mean superiority in a negative sense. We can make things easier for ourselves. But by the end of the day, I think we're going to have great clarity with this inner truth, and everyone's going to understand what needs to be done, and that includes us. If we were stubborn at the beginning of the day, by the end of the day, I think we're going to be a lot more flexible. Okay, so that's the I Ching. So what I want to do now is go back to David Bowie's chart, which I did look at 2 days ago, but I don't think I looked at it really very successfully. I think I missed a lot out there. So there's David Bowie's chart. Okay, no, that's today's chart. So let's start looking at David Bowie's chart. So this is his natal chart. Born 9 in the morning in Brixton, in South London, on January the 8th, 1947. So what makes that chart special? Now, I already have suggested that, okay, Venus in Sagittarius, that Venus in Sagittarius on the midheaven, I think that makes the chart quite special. Angular Venus in Sagittarius, I think, as I said 2 days ago, that might indicate the way he can change himself and the way he appears. Venus in Sagittarius likes to appear in different ways, has a very bizarre dress sense, and I think costumery was, a very important part of who David Bowie actually was, and reaching out to a wider audience with that. But there are other things in that chart. Also, I should point out, what I didn't point out in that chart is that everything is, except for Uranus and the North Node, is south. Everything is towards the midheaven. You can see everything is on the top half of the chart, and that shows someone who is really able to push themselves out to the wider audience, to the world at large. In the process, there might be a certain lack of grounding. I mean, that is a problem. But yeah, he is really able to push himself out to the world at large. Now, it seems to me that David Bowie was kind of in tune with the cosmos. because I think if you want to be a successful musician, I like a really successful musician, you do have to be in tune with the cosmos. You have to be in tune with all of the trends going on around you. And I think there's a theory, but there was, I think, who was he? I think his name was David Taverner, and I was reading his theory about, I think it was him, but it was his theory about music. I think he had this theory that something like all the music in the world has already been written, has already been composed, almost, I don't know, at the beginning of time. And so when someone composes music and creates music, all what they're doing is they're simply discovering something. I do like that idea, particularly because it helps explain perhaps how very young people can produce kind of works of genius. How, you're thinking, how can they do it? But maybe it's about sort of discovery of something that has been around since the beginning of time. And maybe this is what we're seeing with David Bowie, and through his his various phases. So he must have been able to pick something up from the cosmos, and that must have helped him become so successful. So where is it in his chart? Now, if you've been watching my videos, you will know that I am a major advocate of using semi-squares and sesquiquadrates. I take the view that you can't really interpret a chart fully if you don't use semi-squares and sesquiquadrates, particularly the close semi-squares and sesquiquadrates. And I actually take the view that sextiles and trines are less important than semi-squares and sesquiquadrates, particularly if they're close. Now, that might sound a controversial thing to say. Perhaps it's because I've been influenced by the sort of German schools of astrology, like the Hamburg system and Reinhold Ebertin, who with their midpoint system have put great emphasis on semi-squares and sesquiquadrates. But in the case of David Bowie, his moon, he's got moon exactly on the 7th house cusp. So yes, moon in Leo, the attention that moon in Leo must love his moon, liking, but it's on the 7th house cusp, and so that moon is the other. It's the least conscious part, arguably, of the chart, the 7th house. So the moon in Leo is able to pick up a load of stuff because it is exactly on the descendant. But what makes that really important is the fact that it is exactly semi-square Uranus. So you will see that the moon is at 350 Leo, Uranus is at 1841 Gemini. So the moon and Uranus, they are exactly 45 degrees apart. So the moon completely picks up that Uranus. So you might be thinking that David Bowie is a very Uranus kind of person. So the question is, why would you say that he's a Uranus kind of person? Uranus is about revolution, is about revolutionary, is about being different, being unusual, being weird, whatever. But why would you say that? Is it enough to just look at this Aquarius rising and say, oh, yeah, it's got Aquarius rising, that makes him... No, a lot of people have Aquarius rising, but what gives him the quality of Uranus is to a great extent his moon Uranus semi-square. And that, I believe, is a very important aspect, because you remember Uranus is not just semi-square his moon; it's semi-square his ascendant. I mean, assuming he really was born at 9 in the morning. Of course, we don't know for sure that it's a very round number, 9 in the morning. But if he really was born at 9 in the morning, then that then yes, the moon would be semi-square. Then Uranus would be semi-square his ascendant. So, okay, so Uranus, we could regard Uranus as being that kind of cosmic transpersonal energy. Uranus in Gemini. That's quite a fun placement for Uranus, but we mustn't forget that Uranus in Gemini, it stays in Gemini for 7 years. So there are loads of people born, I don't know, late 40s, early 50s, who would have moon in Gemini. So what makes David Bowie special? Part of what makes him special is the fact that that moon is exactly semi-square his Uranus. So that's where how it comes together. But it's more than that. There's another way in which it's made special. Now, when you think about David Bowie, probably another planet that comes to mind would be Neptune. Neptune is the planet of sort of glamour, something that's a bit dangerous, otherworldly. I would have said that David Bowie and Neptune, you'd expect them to have a natural affinity. But when you look at his chart at first, you're thinking, well, hold on, where's the Neptune? Where do we see Neptune here? Okay, he's got sort of Neptune square, sextile Pluto, but so what? Everyone's got sextile Pluto, pretty much born at the end of the 20th century. So that doesn't help. Neptune, okay, he's got Neptune square Mercury. That's an important aspect, and so Mercury is certainly the way he communicates, his style, the whole way perhaps he thinks, perhaps the way he writes music. So yes, we've got Neptune square Mercury. That is good. But what else? Where else is Neptune? Neptune still doesn't have that sort of central role that we might expect it to have, unless we want to look at this in terms of midpoints. And yes, I'm a big advocate of midpoints. You don't. I know there are lots of midpoints. I mean, just to give you an example, just to show you, those are loads of midpoints. That probably looks horrible to you. These are all of David Bowie's midpoints. Well, how can you possibly make sense of all that? Well, the reality is you don't have to make sense of all of that. So going back to the chart, if you look at his moon and his moon and his Uranus, which I think is such an important aspect, that moon 45 degree, it's important because it's 45 degree. It's exactly 45 degrees. So the pair, the Moon-Uranus pair, the reason you would look at the Moon-Uranus pair is because they are 45 degrees apart, and because the ascendant is involved. So that's why you look at that pair, the Moon-Uranus. And so what is the midpoint? Well, you can tell by eye, but it's somewhere between 3 and 18, so it's going to be at around 10 Cancer, maybe. Then we can actually get it. We can get it precisely. So we can go down this to find out where the moon Uranus midpoint actually precisely is. That's whoops. There it is. You can see moon Uranus is at 11:15 of the cardinal signs. So we go back to his chart. So we can see that 11:15 is where his moon Uranus midpoint is. Then we see that Neptune, 11:15 Cancer, so Neptune at 10:48 is square his moon Uranus midpoint. So that gives us the answer to our question. That's where Neptune fits in. That moon Uranus is important. It's not just he's got his moon Uranus midpoint, and it's also his ascendant Uranus midpoint, and Neptune is square it. So that's what gives David Bowie that access to that sort of access to the cosmos. I think it's because of that midpoint. And I don't think that I'm just trying to look at his chart in hindsight. To me, that seems obvious that midpoint is going to be important because Moon Uranus are in 45 are at 45 degrees apart, and Neptune is squaring that point. And so I think that really does help. That does really help explain what's going on. You think about that Moon Uranus pair. Someone who is an individual, someone who is different. The Moon is a very sort of unconscious force. So Moon Uranus, someone who's unconscious, whose emotions are sort of quite innovative, radical, sort of revolutionary. And then you put Neptune there, and that gives him access to everything. That gives him access, perhaps, to that stored pool of music, which is waiting for him to discover when the time is right. Of course, only when the time is right. When Neptune, Neptune in Libra, when he was born at that time, then that store became available to this person born in the late 40s. So another thing to consider, which I talked about, is the midpoints of the other midpoints that Uranus and the ascendant are on. So what I want to do is show you is look at this wheel here. Now this is before computers. This is how midpoints were discovered. This is called the 90-degree wheel. Basically, everything in cardinal signs are put on the first third. Everything in fixed signs are put on the middle third. So 0 to 30. Everything cardinal. So there's his Sun and Mars in Capricorn. Then in the middle bit, everything in fixed. So you see, he's got his moon at an ascendant at 3 Leo, so it's put at 33. Then his Gemini, his Mercury at 19 Gemini, because you start the mutable signs there. I mean, you don't have to get into the details at this stage, but I really want to put up a detailed video about really how to look at midpoints. But what I wanted to show you was see, there's his Uranus. So there is his Uranus. There's his moon. There's his moon on the ascendant. So that's his moon Uranus axis. So now when we look at the 90-degree dial, you can see that Uranus becomes completely configured with the moon. It becomes a single axis. And then we can see what midpoints it on. And there's his Sun-Mars conjunction. And then we look at the other side, and there's Jupiter. So Jupiter is Jupiter's the Sun-Jupiter midpoint, and the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. So Uranus Uranus and the Moon are on his Sun-Jupiter midpoint and his Mars-Jupiter midpoint. So you can see the sort of the energy and the dynamism there, but it's being put into something, into Uranus, that there is that sort of weirdness and the revolutionary nature of David Bowie, and the fact that it's also the moon. It's tied up with the moon. The moon and the Uranus are almost working at the same level, and so, from my eyes, I think that's the real sort of explanation of why David Bowie is special. I think you're not going to have many charts with this kind of configuration. Of course, there was circumstance. That in itself, astrology is not going to make someone in itself famous. There can only be one David Bowie, and it must have been a set of particular circumstances in his life which allowed him to reach the heights that he did, and allowed him to really make the most of everything. So what I want to do now is I want to consider his death. I did touch on his death a couple of days ago. Now, now the traditional way of predicting death was to use primary directions. So primary directions basically mean that you are rotating the Earth 1 degree for 1 year. So the first degree of the Earth's rotation after birth represents the first year of life. So that's how it works. So the 10 degree rotation would be the 10th year of life. So in terms of David Bowie's chart, let's have a look at one type of rotation. So you can see he's got Saturn in the 7th house. When he was born, 9 in the morning, there's Saturn in the 7th house. So what would the positions of the planets be like, say, 4.5 hours after he was born? So let's just change that chart and move it forward by 4.5 hours. So it's 9 o'clock. I'm just going to make it 13:30. So make it 1:30. See, I've moved the chart forward 1.5 hours. You can see that Saturn is no longer in the 7th house. Saturn has come round and it's actually hit the IC. It's 4.5 hours after he was born. So you could ask, well, what's the big deal about 4.5 hours? Well, 4.5 hours, the Earth moves, 360 degrees in 1 day. So that's equivalent to 360 years. So what portion of 360 years is 4.5 hours? So if we take, that's my calculator, so let's say if I take 4.5, I divide by 24, so that's about 0.1875, that's about 19% of that 360 move. Then I multiply that by 360, I get 67.5, late 60s. That is, of course, when he died. He died in his late 60s. So the Earth moved around 37, it's not exactly, but around 37, 38 degrees to get Saturn on the descendant. So you might be thinking, well, so what? Well, Saturn on the descendant could be quite important, because if you, let's just reset his chart to how he was really born. when he was really born. You see, he has Venus exactly on the midheaven. So when Saturn comes down 4.5 hours after he was born to the IC, it's not just on the IC, it's hitting his Venus. And so I am thinking that Saturn to his Venus had something to do with his death. And I don't think that traditionally Venus would have been associated with the giver of life. But I think maybe in this case, it's maybe a bit controversial, but maybe Venus perhaps actually was linked with his life. And when Saturn was opposition his Venus, by primary direction, his life was at incredible risk. So there's a program which you can get for free. It's called Pi Marinus or Marinus. And what it does is it does primary directions. And this is the printout of these primary directions. So here is the printout from the Marinus program. And we can see sort of in red that is the Saturn primary direction in Mundo to his opposition to the opposition of Venus. So in Mundo, I'm not going to get into the details, but that's one way of doing primary directions. And you can see that direction took place on the 14th of June 2015. The other type is zodiacal. The zodiacal primary direction, Saturn hitting Venus, was on the 25th of April 2016. So, as I said, I'm really not going to get into the differences between zodiacal and in Mundo primary directions here. Hopefully I'll do a video about it later. So this is, if you like, a zone of danger, sort of late 2015, early 2016. You know, as it happened, he died in between these two dates on January the 10th, 2016. So can we fine-tune that forecast to say, okay, he's at risk late 2015, early 2016, but when exactly? So let's see what we can do. So going back to his chart, we can do some profections. Now, profections is a type of progression which moves the chart by one sign every year. So this means that your profections repeat every 12 years. And profections can be used as a way of fine-tuning the timing of a forecast. So so those are his profected positions for when he died. So let's compare those with his birth chart. So okay, there we have it. So you can see that there's his inside. We have the inner wheel is his birth chart. The outer wheel is his of the profections for the day he died. And so you can see that in his natal chart, his Sun and Venus were exactly 45 degrees apart. And so as the relationship between the planets stays the same in the profection, we can see that profected Venus was at 221 Virgo and profected Sun was at 1727 Libra. So that profected Venus was making an exact square to his at 221 Virgo to his natal Venus at what's that, 239, I think 239 Sagittarius, something like that. So that was acting as a trigger. So the big event primary Saturn opposition his Venus was this whole period of vulnerability. So these profections are acting as a trigger. So Venus was triggering the primary by being exactly square his natal Venus, and the Sun, profected Sun, was exactly semi-square, 45 degrees from his natal Venus. So this might have been a time in January where he was going to be particularly vulnerable. Now, a third method of timing would be the solar return. So David Bowie's solar return for when he died, for the year he died, obviously took place on his birthday. So his birthday was January the 8th, 2016. So he died 2 days after his birthday. So that was his 69th birthday. And so this is his solar return. So what do we see in his solar return? We see in his solar return an exact, well, a very close conjunction between Venus and Saturn in Sagittarius. And so he's got, in his natal chart, Venus in Sagittarius, okay? Not exactly at these degrees, but he's got Venus in Sagittarius, and primary Saturn is opposition his Venus. So this Venus-Saturn symbolism is repeated in his solar return. And I would argue that that is his final trigger. And I think, therefore, we can see why he died when he died. One other thing I should point out about his death, looking at his solar return. In that solar return, Mars was at 229 Scorpio. He died 2 days later, so Mars was at around 3 degrees Scorpio when he died. Now, let's go back to that big configuration in his natal chart that I was talking about at the beginning. The fact that he has got 3 degrees Leo, Moon at 3 degrees Leo, exactly conjunct the ascendant, with Uranus semi-square. So Mars was at 3 degrees Scorpio when he died. In other words, Mars was square his ascendant, square his moon, and transiting Mars was also, this transiting Mars at 3 degrees Scorpio was also sesquiquadrate Mercury. So that Mars was the actual final thing that killed him, because it triggered what I believe is, really the most important and outstanding configuration in his natal chart. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about David Bowie. I have gone on for far too long. I hope you found what I said of some interest. I suppose you probably did find it of some interest, because you wouldn't be watching at this late stage in the video if you found it completely boring. But yeah, I have gone on for too long. Nonetheless, if you have liked this video, I would be grateful if you would press the like button, and if you're not subscribed and you thought this video was useful, again, I'd be grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.